The Buckeyes are no longer in Indianapolis, but at Big Ten Media Days, they are still the main attraction on the Podcast Daily. These are some second thoughts on a Thursday edition of the Podcast Daily, thinking about what those three Buckeyes, Denzel Burke, Jack Sawyer, Emeka Egbuka, and head coach Ryan Day talked about when they were in this building, Lucas Oil Stadium, earlier in the week. That's Jeremy Birmingham, Bill Landis. I'm Austin Ward. So let's get into a little bit more of, we talked about it on Snap Judgments, what's going on with some of the depth chart stuff we heard. With not a great amount of information, Bill, but when you went through and thought back about what the Buckeyes said, anything else jump out at you?
I really liked an answer Ryan Day had. I can't recall what the question was exactly. It was about Emeka Egbuka and sort of what a healthy Emeka I think could do for Ohio State. And his answer was, whatever the question is, the answer is Emeka.
That was a great line.
Which I thought was like it was a great line, like a really great like summation, I think, of the kind of player that Emeka can be when he is fully healthy. And it is interesting to me that for as good as he is, Emeka has always kind of been like second fiddle, right? Like, and like last year just like was hurt. And I think this offseason, at least, it kind of felt similarly, right? Talking a lot about JJ Smith, talking a lot about the running backs. And the way that Ryan Day described Emeka's game, because he went on after that to say, like, you can throw him a bubble, you can hand him the ball off, he can beat a defender deep, he can beat man coverage, he can beat zone coverage, he can block.
He can throw it.
He can throw it, yeah, which was stuck that one in the back pocket. I just like, I think we've talked about before, maybe this offense sort of being built around Emeka, and I'm not necessarily taking what Ryan Day said and moving forward thinking like this is definitely going to be an offense built around Emeka, but if anyone was like of that mind, I think maybe you'd come away feeling a little more confident in that. I do think part of it's his experience and his leadership on an offense that's kind of young in spots, but it's more about the player that he is. Like, he has all the potential in the world, and if we're in the middle of the season and people are like, Emeka Egbuka might be the best player in college football, I don't know that I'd be shocked by that. So I was nice to be reminded of some of that here on Tuesday.
Yeah, we were talking on the Wednesday morning Podcast Daily with Denzel Burke, and I asked him, like, how did he grow into being a leader? Like, how does that happen? And Ryan Day said it about Emeka Egbuka multiple times. Like, he's always been a leader from the minute he got there. So this is a guy who was the number one ranked receiver in the country coming out of the high school in the class of 2021. Got overshadowed when he got on campus because Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson and Jackson Smith-Njigba were there. And then Marvin became Marvin. But, like, no one should just look and gloss over Emeka Egbuka. Like, he's never been, in the last 2 years especially, he's had just a little injuries here and there that have slowed him down, which you hope doesn't happen this year. But, like, that dude is a real, I asked him on the daily, like, is there anything you're bad at? And he's like, and he said, no, my mom asked me the same question. Like, she gets like, and so, Ryan Day sees that the offense has to be built around a guy like that, I think.
Yeah. And I think it will be. We saw, thinking back to March and April, in those 5 practice windows we had, there were a lot of things that were being worked on that were like featuring Emeka Egbuka as a runner. And I think that not just Ryan Day knows that, but Chip Kelly does too, that this guy has a skill set that is pretty rare. And it's not just about his route running ability. As Bill said, there's a lot of different ways that Ohio State can use him. And I think that they will. And the way I view it a little bit is like, if Ohio State 2 years ago wanted to do stuff moving around Jackson and putting Jackson Smith-Njigba in the backfield and letting him get matchups on linebackers, and we only got a small glimpse at that, I think Emeka can do that almost like tenfold.
Yeah, I think I probably agree with that, because Emeka is a different physical profile without sacrificing, I think, much in the way, or maybe nothing at all in agility. Right? He reminds me a little bit of like Deebo Samuel, but I think he's a much better like down the field receiver than Deebo Samuel. No offense to Deebo, he's great, but like some of the stuff that the Niners do with him, getting him involved in the run game, I want to see Ohio State do that with Emeka Egbuka. I think perhaps Brandon Inniss could do some of that stuff too. And Ryan Day, I think, kind of mentioned that a little bit on Tuesday. But Emeka is practically built for that role, but also just happens to have the body control and the awareness to do the other stuff a receiver does too. He's a really complete, versatile player. I know he had the 1,000-yard season his sophomore year, but I really don't think we've seen like the best of him and all that he can do, and I hope we see it this year.
No, I thought Ryan Day was asked about the wide receivers, and he mentioned that he's got to find 4 through 7. But he also made it a point to say that when Brandon Ennis is on the field, you feel him. Like I think maybe that there's a little reluctance to say we've got the first 4 because Brandon's been hurt and trying to come back from the foot injury that he had in the end of spring. But it seems to me like the other conversation was we need Jaden Ballard to step up. We need Kojo Antwi to step up. We need someone else to step up. But he didn't say Brandon Ennis needs to step up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's fairly confident that they have their 4. And now it's a matter of is there depth behind them. But Emeka Egbuka is the leader, unquestioned. And like there's so many times in the last 9 months we've talked about Jack Sawyer or Denzel Burke and their role in bringing everyone back. But Emeka Egbuka, from a need perspective on the team of being a guy in that room who is the only veteran that's played, and obviously just the top line talent, like he might be the most important of the returning guys. Like obviously as a group, it's so important they all return. But if you had to pick one, like that guy had to come back. Like if you look at this offense, he's the offense needs veterans. They need experience, and he's like the only guy that has it.
I think I would, of all the guys who came back, if you said like wipe them all off the board, you could have one of them. I think I'd pick Emeka. Maybe Denzel. I think it's those 2.
I think given the experience that Jermaine Matthews had last year and with Davis and Igbinosun back, I think you could make a case that Emeka is more important to the wide receiver room than Denzel is to the corners, which again, like that's a luxury pick for everybody. And that's not to say that there is reason to be concerned about the upside of Carnell Tate or Jeremiah Smith, because there really isn't, or what a healthy Brandon Ennis might be able to provide to Ohio State. Like that room is going to be fine. But in terms of going into week 1, or if we've talked about a ramp up process to get ready for Oregon, like it's probably not going to always be the smoothest journey forward. These guys are doing it for the first time. As great as we think Jeremiah Smith is and can be, surely there are going to be some growing pains at some point. I don't know what that looks like for him, but you know that you're not going to have that with Emeka. Like if there's any sticky situation that you run into trying to handle Iowa or going on the road to Michigan State, none of that will be new to Emeka Egbuka. That's critical.
Yeah, I mean, you can get by with young receivers. They did it in 2021 or 2022, I guess, thinking they'd have Jackson at the time, and then it turned out it was just kind of Marvin and Emeka. They also had C.J. Stroud a quarterback, which like they're probably not going to have this year. I'm not saying the quarterback play is going to be bad, but a BPS helps account for lack of experience, I think, at the receiver position. So they would be fine, I think, long term, but it could have been a little rough in the first month or 2 of the season had Emeka not come back.
Berm, on second thoughts, what else did you come away with on Tuesday?
I keep going back to Jack Sawyer talking about how he feels like the players let down Ryan Day. And I don't know why, but I keep thinking about that quote from Jack. And it does seem like as invested as the coaches have been in making sure that the players didn't come back for no reason, I think that there is a noticeable trend among the players thinking we are the reason that we've lost these games to Michigan, not the coaches. And I think that maybe that's not entirely true. I mean, there's bits and pieces probably, but something about just the accountability of this team feels different to me. And the individuals saying, I don't want to let down this guy anymore. Like I think it's important for people to understand. And Jack was talking about it. Ryan Day is like, he is the leader of this team. And I think that sometimes it gets glossed over, or maybe he is given I just think Ryan Day is totally misunderstood. Honestly. And I think from a on the field and off field perspective, I think he's completely misunderstood. And I think it's rare we get a chance to hear the players like stand up for him directly. Jack was talking and saying like people think Ryan Day doesn't care, or like he didn't care if they lose. And you could tell it was actually making him pretty upset that people have that misinterpretation of Ryan Day's competitive nature. And it's something that has just stuck with me. I feel like there's much more like man-to-man accountability here than there has been.
That ownership and accountability is really important for Ohio State. And when we keep making this point about how many veterans they have coming back, they understand what they're being asked to do. So on the one hand, that's important and valuable. And on the other, it's like, should you really be taking the blame or feeling like you let Ryan Day down when the special teams were like a complete disaster and you weren't part of that, or you had coaches on the staff that like maybe weren't putting Ohio State in the right spots. Like it's more important for me to hear Ryan Day talk, and he did that again on Tuesday, about having the right people in the right seats, which is not just about the right personnel on the field, but he is talking more openly and sometimes not directly and not by name about some of the shortcomings that he had in building the staff and the changes that he had to make. And that's not just about Chip Kelly, and it's not just about Parker Fleming, but like the alignment part. I think that's more important, is that Ryan Day's not like blaming other people for that.
No,
like,
and he shouldn't, because he's one of the highest.
That's right. But he can't. But he's not deflecting that part of it. So,
but he also said every year you learn something new, and I think he learned something in the last 18 months about that exact thing. Like, oh, I need other guys around me who I can trust.
Yeah. And also, you need to put more thought, I think, into your staff decisions than just hiring a guy down the hall.
Yeah, that too.
So I think that part was more important. It's not the first time that he's mentioned that, the right guys in the right seats, but you know, it goes along with what you're saying. If everyone is taking ownership and accountability for the mistakes that have been made, again, there aren't a lot of them. Ohio State still was effectively one play away from potentially winning the Big Ten, and certainly winning in Ann Arbor. But when you're talking about those one or two plays that make the difference, those small decisions get amplified. So if that's players that feel like they weren't maybe doing enough, if that's Ryan Day talking about top-down decisions, good. Like that's what Ohio State needs to be doing.
Yeah, I mean they seem aligned, which is all you can ask for. I saw some like pushback from not a lot of people, but some people like on our text service were like, "This is great. They're all in the proper mindset. They're all aligned. They're all pointed in the same direction. Let's talk about it when the games actually start and like see like they can back up their talk," which I totally get.
Yeah, but this is what we're talking about now.
No, I know, I understand that, but I also understand that point of view from any fan who's happy that they all feel like they're pointed in the same direction, but maybe in the back of their mind wondering
a little less talk and a lot more action.
Is that going to show up in the middle of October at the end of November?
All they can do right now is finish up, summer conditioning and workouts and get ready for training camp. So I it's not wrong to be like, well, I'd like to see it on the field. Of course, like that's where they're going to have to prove it. But we are getting a pulse for the way that they're approaching this. And there have been off seasons. Don't know what comments specifically, what Big Ten media days where it's like, I'm not sure that they fully understand the situation. Like there used to be, and there can't be now, there used to just be sometimes complacency. And I remember we were talking about that in 2022, I guess. It's like, well, you can no longer just roll the helmet out there and assume that you're going to beat Michigan. Like none of that stuff can exist. But you could, I know you talked about it. I remember specifically, you felt that growing sense of complacency with the programs. Like it cannot continue like this forever. And it didn't.
Yeah. I mean, nothing good lasts forever. Nothing bad lasts forever either. And that's the simple truth of.
What about cold November rain?
Well, that does last forever, especially in Eugene, Oregon. But no, the program was at such a high, like you couldn't maintain. It's impossible to maintain that. Like even programs like Georgia, like they didn't make the playoff last year. No one's crying about it. I mean, they're mad about it because they felt they should have made it. But Ohio State felt like they should have made it 2 years, in 2021. Like this is where it is when you're at the absolute pinnacle of the sport. Everything that isn't perfect is going to feel like it's fallen short of your goal. And for Ohio State, it has felt that way. And so now you have all these guys, like none of these guys have beat Michigan. Like, I mean, that's kind of nuts.
I know, like we know that, but like Jack Sawyer, like sitting at the table yesterday or Tuesday and saying like, you walk around the Woody, you see all these championship banners, you see reminders of the Michigan game, and like to think that we've done none of that in my time here, because it feels like Jack has been here forever too. It really does hit you.
There was a question asked of him, to your point, Bill. It may have been Adam King. He was like, what would it mean to win gold pants? Like that question being asked of an Ohio State player, like that's never happened in my time on the beat.
Yeah.
You'd need to beat Michigan, and you've never done that. That is wild.
Yeah, but it's
reality. I'm not pretending it's not.
But it's also, and I think people sometimes like try to force a number of issues into one issue, or say that it's only because of this. It's not, like, it's not one thing or another. Like it's I remember very specifically after the 2021 game talking about how I felt that the year off for Michigan reset this entire rivalry, and like it eliminated the brain fog that they were having, and it gave Ohio State players like an unearned sense of entitlement heading into 2021. Like, oh, they're not even in our thoughts, and
They were favored by 50.
right, like it didn't matter at that point to like Michigan. Those guys had never really lost to Ohio State, and those Ohio State players had never beaten Michigan, the majority of them. And then all of a sudden, you go out there and think, well, the last team that played them scored 62 on them. The team before that, like, well, okay, well, that's not here where we are anymore. And there's a number of things that have to be exercised in order to get it right. And Ryan Day's staff alignment, the players, everything just feels like it's in the right spot to do it. And I don't know that I really felt that it was in the last couple of years. Now, well, again, to your point yesterday, like if Ryan Day gets to a point in October where all he's thinking about is Michigan, like maybe he has that hiccup again, because I think to his detriment sometimes when he's so laser focused on something, it eliminates his ability to see other things. And in this new role where he's the CEO, like he can't do that. He can't do that.
He mentioned several times like being able to see the horizon now, like in his new role, and like anticipate things that are coming, whether that's like on the field stuff in games or like stuff for the program. I think he meant both. He's never talked like that before, and I think that's good. I think that's like I've seen people ask like, well, what's the benefit of him like not calling plays if that's what he does best? Like it's that, because if he's not doing it, then who is for the program? He needs to be able to do that. So,
what did you guys think? Sorry, Bill. Did Denzel Burke talk in the spring about Will Howard and I need to see more, blah, blah, blah. And he was asked about it again on Tuesday, and he basically said, yep, still do. Is that just Denzel being Denzel? Is it him saying, actually, we haven't seen any actual practice since then, so it doesn't matter? Mm-hmm. How do you view it?
I think part of it is Denzel being Denzel, because he wants to hold guys accountable. Unless you're Jeremiah Smith, who he thinks is the best receiver anyone's ever seen. But watch Will Howard at Kansas State, right? Like sometimes him throwing the football is not the prettiest thing in the world. I think we all know that. That's like an honest assessment of him. There are other reasons why I think he's going to be this team's quarterback, like the athleticism, the experience, the physicality that he brings to the position. I think if I'm making a list of all the things that make Will Howard a potentially good quarterback for Ohio State, throwing the football is not near the top, if I'm being perfectly honest. So if Denzel Burke is like, I'm not totally enamored with what he's seen so far from Will throwing the football, I'm not surprised to hear that.
It seems to me like for what Will Howard's forte is and going to be his Will forte, like Jack Sawyer may have been a better one to ask. Like, what's it like if he starts to move in the pocket? Like, what's it like to tackle someone with his frame? A linebacker may be better suited, because Denzel Burke is incredibly confident and incredibly good as corner. So probably nobody completed many balls on him in practice.
Yeah, that's probably true.
We saw the circus grab from Jeremiah Smith, but that was in great coverage from Denzel. And I think that was a Devin Brown throw. In some ways, so that was asked, and he basically said the same thing again. He said that Will Howard got better by the end of camp. He seemed to get more comfortable, but that he hasn't seen him do anything since then. So he's not going to really change his opinion. But I would have, maybe I should have followed up in a different way. But like, okay, well, what does that mean compared to Devin Brown or Lincoln Kienholz or Julian Sand or Aaron Nolan? Like, there was a hyper focus on, because he specifically talked about Will Howard in the spring, and it wasn't like, well, I need to see more about from the other four as well. Like, maybe we just should have opened up that question to the rest of the quarterback battle.
Probably.
I would love to get Denzel's no BS evaluation of the entire quarterback room. That'd be great. Can we get him back here?
Yeah,
they go back home.
We need him. We need him again. We missed an opportunity.
Yeah.
So
there's always another day.
I don't.
What do you think?
I don't think it's a surprising.
Neuheisel saying that Julian Sand's going to be the starting quarterback. I didn't hear the quote, so I'd like to know. Did either of you hear the quote or read the quote like directly? Did you see what he said?
No. We're going to try to talk to him about it on Kings of Columbus, so we'll ask him.
Yeah, apparently he said a month and a half ago on SiriusXM, which I'm kind of amazed that it was not aggregated anywhere. There is one thread on 11 Warriors that somebody heard it live that said, by the midpoint of the season, Julian Sain is going to be the starting quarterback at Ohio State.
That's hedging your bets pretty good, though.
Well, I don't know. I guess it wasn't quoted word for word, so maybe I added that. Well, hopefully, Kings of Columbus or Kings of the North with Rick Neuheisel will get to the bottom of that.
I hope so. I would like. I have about 17 questions like that.
Because that's a spicy take.
That's a spicy meatball.
I've not seen anybody else go that far. I think
I've been
the next closest is Bill saying that Julian Sain's going to be the backup. So you and Rick Neuheisel, maybe you shouldn't sit down together.
There is a scenario. I mean, it's unlikely, but if Ohio State were to lose to Michigan State or Iowa and then lose at Oregon, at that point you lose nothing by saying, okay, Julian's the guy from here on out. So like, I don't see a world.
That's the resetting the expectation. Like if Ohio State loses 2 games, they're still going to the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't see a world, but I think you can do it with Julian Sain from that point. I don't see a scenario where an undefeated Ohio State team after Oregon is changing its quarterback. Like that's ludicrous.
Clemson did it. Didn't they?
I think they were 4-0, right? And then
It was Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence. Like, I don't know, man.
Kind of an above-average college quarterback and a really young superstar.
Kelly Bryant was not an above-average college quarterback.
At the time, he was thought to be. Turned out he wasn't. But they were also doing like a 2 QB system at the start of that year. It wasn't like
Right. It wasn't
Trevor was on the bench the whole time. They were sharing snaps.
I think they may have got that decision right. Is that the last time Dabo got something right?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Well, I know it's been a great episode of the podcast daily if we're ending up talking about Trevor Lawrence and Dabo Swinney at the end. But hey, we're talking ball. It was great to be here again on in a Big Ten Media Days. There's still going to be more from Bill and Doug because later on Thursday, there's still more teams and Michigan will appear. So I imagine there will be some thoughts and takes coming from there. And then we'll be back again on Friday for the podcast daily with probably me and you, huh?
Probably.
All right. Well, we'll figure that out. We got time. Thanks for joining us. Second Thoughts on a Thursday episode of the podcast daily. That's Bill and Berm. I'm Austin. So long.